Radha Radhe, Happy New Year, Happy Bhakti Divas. Welcome to our recap video for today's Bhagavad Gita study session as we continue now after the winter holiday season along our journey of chapter 12. Along with me, as always, here is Mummy.
Radhe Radhe.
Let's take a look at the content we covered today. I'll bring up the screen. We had our usual recap quiz, of course. That was to cover material from the last session after the holiday gap, chapter 12, verses 5, 6, and 7. And then we covered chapter 12, verse 8 today, and then had some fun also based on the holiday homework assignments. As always, if you take a look at the description for this video, you can get a link to the free community portal where all these slides are available, recap information, the videos, as well as a link for other supplementary material for Bhagavad Gita, Sanskrit, and so on. So please do take a look at that description and use that for your benefit. With that, let us get into chapter 12, verse 8.
मय्येव मन आधत्स्व मयि बुद्धिं निवेशय निवसिष्यसि मय्येव अत ऊर्ध्वं न संशयः.
So, chapter 12, verse 8 has the catchphrase as a question to ponder about, and it's a pun in terms of the words in the phrase, fixed mindset. We know the answer, of course, from many of Swamiji's lectures and discourses that on the spiritual journey, obviously, we seek to have a growth mindset, not a fixed mindset. Here, the irony, the pun being used is Sri Krishna says, fix our mind on Him, surrender our intellect to Him. So the mindset, the set of the mind and the intellect, again, a pun, it's fixed in the sense that it's fixed alone and solely on Sri Krishna. But of course, it's not at all to suggest that it is a fixed mindset as opposed to a growth mindset. So that's why it's a question, the catchphrase, something for all of us to ponder about. As we look at the content here, chapter 12, verse 8, we see in the translation that indeed Sri Krishna is saying, if we follow this, then there is no doubt, 100% guarantee that we will always live in Him. So again, fixing the mind on Him alone, surrendering our intellect. Surrender, we talk about it all the time. Swamiji, Maharajji have mentioned it all over the place. Yet, we also see in the commentary that we'll have to wait till much later, towards the end of the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, verse 66, where Swamiji will present the characteristics of a surrendered process or intellect. So we know it, but at the same time, we'll wait for those expansive details when we get to chapter 18. Again, the idea here is the stress, as Mummy mentioned constantly in our class today, the focus on the mind. We mentioned chapter 6, verse 5, where the mind can be our best friend, yet it can be our worst enemy. So having our mind be restrained is important. And mind means the mind as well as the senses. If the higher entity, the functioning of the mind, which is the intellect, can be the one that is taking the right decisions, the discerning process that it follows, then going in the spiritual direction, we can be away from the bondage of Maya and materialism and, in fact, get towards, at some stage, liberation from all of this. So again, the essence is, of course, the importance of the mind. Swamiji has quoted several, shlokas, of course, from scriptures here. He gives the example of the mind and the senses at play even when we are sleeping, when we think everything is inactive, yet we know that we can actually understand and even feel the perception or experiences when you think about food, activities, etc., even while asleep. Therefore, what's important is also looking at the examples Swamiji gives of, for instance, the doctor or the lawyer, or as I had mentioned in class, even think about getting a haircut. I said this especially as a male person. If you think about it, you go a few weeks at a gap and keep going, there is the clipper, scissors, and there's even a razor. Think about the sharpness of the objects, what they can do if misused. Yet we go with full faith, full confidence, and you get the haircut. In contrast, people who are doubters can raise all kinds of questions about the authenticity of God, the existence, the trust in a guru. So these are parallels, opposing ideas. examples to keep in mind, which would, I think, help, at least for those on the spiritual journey, continue to strengthen their faith and that process of surrender to God. So the way it happens, Mummy mentioned in class, the descending process of knowledge. We've seen this in the introduction by Swamiji to his holy Bhagavad Gita. And through that, going to a bona fide guru. Let's look at this as the English word to learn for this time. We know it. It's really about when you are acting in good faith with sincerity and genuineness. So, a bona fide guru, one who truly understands the scriptures, and with the grace of God, we then continue on the divine path. We avoid what is known as this viparyaya, these reversals of knowledge under material illusion, and continue again in the pursuit of the excellence of spirituality. The other thing I'll add here is we've got one of the shlokas from the Bhagavatam quoting Akrur. Akrur, interestingly, he is the one who, under Kansa's instructions, sadly, he had to bring Krishna and Balram to Kansa's kingdom. And that is when, of course, Kansa eventually was killed. But nevertheless, he did that. When he brought Krishna and Balram, the gopis were very, very disappointed. And they thought he's doing a bad thing, but he was only following his duty. They even sort of like, made fun of him and said, "You are not a Akrur." Akrur means someone who is not cruel. But they said, "You are cruel because you're taking our Sri Krishna away." But at the same time, there was so much learning there for the gopis because they got to live in the separation of Sri Krishna and elevate their spirituality and devotion and love even more and more. So something to look at from the Bhagavatam perspective. I'll quickly take us to our flyer that we also saw in class. Any thoughts on how to always live in God? We know the answer now. Fix the mind on God, surrender the intellect to Him alone, and then we can always live in Him in the sense that, well, our thoughts are going to be aligned with God, aligned with the will of God. We appreciate the grace He offers all the time, and then there is no doubt we will always live in Him. Mami, I'll pass it over to you now to add more explanation and also give us any Sanskrit words to take away.
Thank you, Gagan. So this is verse number 8, in which Sri Krishna is teaching how to worship him in the personal form. Because previously he has explained that to worship God as a divine light, as Gyanis do, it is very tough, it is difficult, and it is full of tribulations. Whereas to worship God in the personal form is easier and better. And now in this verse, he is explaining that how to do it. So he says that most important thing is to fix your mind. So, because mind is the one which keeps running here, there, and mind is the one where thoughts are being manufactured as in a factory, that is the problem. And if from our senses, mind is the most important sense. So, if we fix it on God, then the whole problem is solved. Because as Swamiji says, even in dream, the mind keeps on going here, there, and we are able to savor all the other senses through the mind itself, even in the dream when everything else is inactive. So we have to learn to control this mind and fix this mind on God. And then Krishna says also surrender the intellect to him. So, usually we know that intellect is the one which analyzes and which discriminates and which controls the mind. But here Krishna is saying surrender your intellect also. So, what does this mean? So, basically, what is happening, because right now our intellect is not ready. It has defective knowledge from many lifetimes. So, first, either we strengthen our intellect with the right knowledge. But since we don't have that right knowledge, we have to surrender it, because our intellect is all the time doubting. All the time questions are arising. There is no steadfast faith because we are not able to understand what God is. But if through a bona fide guru, we are able to get the right information, the right wisdom, which he has got from the descending process through scriptures, the guru has the right knowledge, then our intellect can function very well. But normally, because we are habituated for many, many lifetimes with this defective knowledge. So Krishna says, surrender your intellect, fix your mind on Sri Krishna and surrender your intellect, and that is when we will always live in Him and He will be able to attain Him. There is no doubt. So, what happens? How can we fix the mind when we surrender our intellect to Him? Hmm? Because in other pursuits also, when we face situations which are beyond our capability, don't we go to a higher authority? Like when we are sick, we go to a doctor. When we have a legal problem, we go to a lawyer because they are the higher authorities. Similarly, in this case also, our intellect has been, it's used to the reversal of knowledge, it is used to viparyaya means we are not understanding the that we are the souls. We are always still thinking we are the body, so we are in material illusion. We are still all the time, our mind goes to this world, and it is then in a bondage. So we have this defective thinking for the since innumerable previous lifetimes. So now if we want to achieve spiritual success and attach our mind to God, then we have to surrender our intellect to God and follow His direction. And surrendering the intellect means to think in accordance with the knowledge received from God. How do we receive that knowledge through God? Via the medium of scriptures and a bona fide guru. Okay, so that is what Sri Krishna is teaching us in this verse. And let's look at two important words. One is adhatsva. Adhatsva means to fix, fix our mind on Sri Krishna. And what is the other word? That is niveshaya. Niveshaya means to surrender. Okay, to surrender to the knowledge which has come to us from God through the scriptures and then through the saints and guru. So importance of mind has been, repeatedly stated in the Vedic scriptures. Swamiji has given us example from Bhagavatam where it says, Chetah khalvasya bandhaya muktaye chatmano matam guneshu saktam bandhaya ratamam va pumsi muktaye. What does it mean? It means that it is all determined by mind. Either we are captive in Maya, this Moh Maya that God has created. And again, it is through our mind only we can feel the liberation. Okay, it all depends on the state of our mind. If we are attached to the world, then we are in bondage. And if we are detached from the world, then the mind gets liberated. Also, Swamiji has quoted from Panchadashi, मन एव मनुष्याणां कारणं बन्धमोक्षयोः. So both bondage and liberation, they are decided by the state of the mind. So Swamiji says in commentary that merely physical devotion is not sufficient. That is what Sri Krishna has said. Sri Krishna says that most important thing is that we have to absorb our mind in thinking about God. That God is great, that God has created this universe. We are all part of God. We are individual souls and He is the supreme soul. So, and He is the one who is running this whole universe. Everything is happening because of his energy. Okay, so if we uh, really want to attain God or be with God, then we have to fix our mind on Him alone all the time, 24 by 7, thinking that Sri Krishna is the Supreme Lord who has created this whole universe, who has created all of us, and who is providing energy to this whole universe. Once we surrender our intellect and take all our doubts away through the wisdom from scriptures and Guru, then we fix our mind on God alone, and God is, we will always then live in God. He will always be with us. Another thing Sri Krishna is, Swamiji has quoted from Bhagavatam, and what does this say? Anitya Natma Anityanatma dukheshu viparyaya matirhayaham. So what does this mean? Basically, our intellect is strapped with wrong knowledge. But because we are eternal souls, but we are not aware of it. We are all the time thinking ourselves as the body, but that is all impermanent, that is perishable. But we forget, and we are all the time attached to this world, and we are collecting all this stuff, which we all know that everything is impermanent, nothing is permanent. So once we really understand the true knowledge is that we are souls and we are part of the Supreme Soul. So we have to surrender our mind, our intellect to God, and fix our mind on Sri Krishna. Over to you, Gagan.
Thank you, Mummy. So, indeed, that is chapter 12, verse 8. And as I said towards the beginning, we also had a chance to go through quickly some of the holiday homework that had been assigned for fun for everybody's progress as well. Again, thank you all for taking part in these exercises, spending quite a bit of time to work on things. So there was a crossword. The link has been posted on the community portal already, and that is for chapter 12, verses 1 through 7. So all the way through the prior session. Lots of across and down clues here for you to try to attempt. And you can give, the responses here are either in English or in transliteration Sanskrit. You could have hyphens, you can have numbers. So those are some hints, of course, to keep in mind if you're still trying to attempt that. And then, of course, we also had the New Year's wishes, this image that we had created to talk briefly about as well. Again, as we mentioned, you'll find at least one important essence, hopefully, if you take a look when you get a chance. So again, glad that we could get some time to talk about both these pieces and really appreciate that everyone took part in spending time on these during the holiday season and of course in the session as well. With that, we get to the end of this recap video, and we look forward to meeting you next week. That is Saturday, 17th January 2026. And that'll be same 8 a.m. Central Time, 7:30 p.m. India time. Till then, thank you so much. Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe.